They knelt down to see the huge hole in his chest, blood oozing out of it, and how he was barely clinging to life. "How did you guys find me?" he weakly asked. "It was Luke's idea, to go after you and help. Ray was able to track you all the way up here," Andre replied. Danny cracked a little smile. "About time you learned my scent." Ray smiled back. "Okay, let's get him out of here." He tried to pick Danny up, but he groaned in pain when Ray touched him. "Go," Danny muttered weakly. "We're not going to leave you, dude. Come on," Ray said as he tried to pick him up again, but Danny screamed in pain. "Stop! You're hurting him!" Luke yelled. Ray pulled his arms out from under Danny. "Well, how are we getting him out of here then?" Andre looked at them. "I don't think we can." Ray and Luke stared at him. "We're not leaving him here! Not after all of this!" Ray yelled. "We already lost Theo. I'm not losing my best friend too," Luke also yelled. "I know, but we need to get out of here. If it hurts to move him, then we should just put him out of his misery," Andre said. "I'm not dead yet," Danny said weakly, blood starting to come out of his mouth. "Just leave me here." "What about vampire blood?" Luke asked. "Maybe there's some here we can use?" "He'd die before we find any. If there was any here," Andre replied. "We have no other choice." Ray and Luke looked at their dad and understood the circumstances. Ray went first. He leaned down and hugged him. "Goodbye," he whispered. "Goodbye," Danny whispered back. Ray stood back up to his dad. Luke leaned down and pulled him into a big hug. "I'm so sorry for this. This is all my fault," he cried into Danny. "It's okay. I knew I wasn't going to make it before I got here. I'd rather die a hero, you know." Luke pulled away and smiled at his friend. Danny smiled back. "I'm glad you were there that day when that kid was giving me a hard time," Luke said. He laid his friend down gently and stood up to join his dad and brother. They turned and saw Theo's body lying there. They got misty-eyed as they were about to walk away. They were about to hop out the window and leave, but a voice called out to them. "Ray!" He turned to see Danny pointing to a sweatshirt in his bag that was lying on the ground. "Please put a fucking shirt on." Ray walked up and grabbed the shirt from the bag and smiled. "Thanks." He ran up to the others and jumped out the window. Danny, lying there, looked up at the ceiling and watched as the world around him faded to black. Maybe, he thought. After a few hours, they returned back to the rest of the group. They were stationed in a small shack in the mountains outside of town. When they walked in, everyone looked at them. Liana and Gloria were the first to start crying. When everyone caught on to why, the room went somber. Andre started to explain what happened when they got there and what ended up happening to Theo and Danny. Luke had tears in his eyes and ran out of the shack in a fit of rage. Ray looked at the sweatshirt tied around his waist and also started to cry. When Andre was done retelling what happened, everyone went silent. They all just stared at each other. "So, what happens now?" Mia asked. "Thanks to them and Danny, we're all safe," Gloria replied, choking through her tears.